Hello everyone! My name is Shrimboy33 and welcome back to another episode of Engines of Puerto Rico after almost a year of not uploading an episode. Jesus. I'm sorry everyone, school has been having me crazy these past few weeks and it's been hard to try and make content. It's been really busy, but school is going to an end and I'll have summer soon, so I shall be free and produce more content, and that means more Engines of Puerto Rico. So, what's the topic for today's episode? Well, I consider a bunch of stuff. I consider doing a complete history of Engine 88, the complete history of La Chiva Loca, aka Engine 72, the Big Boy engine, a remake episode on La Lengua Coca-Cola, and so on and so forth. However, I decided to go back a bit and rethink the topics, as these were more popular topics among the Puerto Rican railroad community. And I thought, what's a topic that's not usually talked about on the community or in YouTube? And that's when I remembered that before we had the American engines, we had French steamers. So, for today's episode, I shall be talking about the Puerto Rican French steamers, how they got here, their life stories here, and how one is still preserved and operational, and how it is the last operational steam locomotive from Puerto Rico. Let's begin. These locomotives were built by the Anciens Experimentants Cal in Paris in 1889. I completely butchered that, but screw it. They were constructed for use in the Panama Canal. However, they were never delivered to Panama and were sold to the FCPR, which stands for Ferrocarriles Central de Puerto Rico. They were numbered engines 1 to 27. Most of them were 260 moguls, specifically 260Ts, the T standing for tank engines. However, there were few that were known to be 264Ts, which were known as the Adriatic wheel configuration. These engines were the ones that were built that connected the lines in the island between 1890 and the very early 1900s. These engines were built for passenger service, however, in Santa Isidro construct railway lines and pull goods from time to time. These pictures you're seeing right now are when these engines were used for goods work. However, in the early 1900s, sometime after the Spanish-American War, all the equipment of the FCPR was fitted with knuckle couplers and other modifications to bring them up to American standards, as more American engines were arriving to the island. In 1902, the FCPR became the ARR. That's standing for American Railroads. They were very quickly replaced on the mainline by American steam locomotives, and they soon became switchers in the twilight years. The last of these engines was engine number 2, who was donated to the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan in 1929. But before we continue with engines 2 history, let's talk about more about the French steamers. These engines were some of the first passenger trains on the island, and when they arrived, they were some of the biggest engines as well, especially the 264s. These engines travel all around the island, going as far as Aguadilla, Mayagüez, and even as far as Humacao. These engines were iconic. They were for a time the icon of Puerto Rican railroads. These engines are beautiful in design. They look so elegant and smooth, but you can tell they're hard-working machines who are proud to do their work. It's really beautiful, honestly. These engines were built for passenger service and they did their jobs well done. I mean, heck, they served us for 40 years. That is a long time for a steam engine. And the fact that some of them were no longer doing passenger work but still were being used in the shunting yards is just amazing. These are really some impressive locomotives we have here. Okay, before we continue on with number 2, there's one more thing I want to bring up. There was an accident with some of these engines. Now, unfortunately, I could not find any info about this or any pictures, but essentially, engine number 8 was hauling some ballast wagons. Heading west was engine number 6, who was pushing 11 wagons. Both trains were, unfortunately, on the same track. When they saw each other, they tried to brake, but these efforts were unsuccessful. Engine 8 ended up plowing into the wagons, destroying 9 of these ballast wagons, while 6 is what remained unharmed, but the wagons were also destroyed. Unfortunately, 8's driver collided into the controls and unfortunately ended up being killed in the accident. Okay, now we can go with engine number 2 history. So, what's so special about number 2? Well, two things. One, it is the last survivor of these 27 engines. Yep, you heard me right, the last one of its kind. And the second reason being, this is the last one, not only of its kind, the last one in operational. Yep, you heard me right there, folks. There's a Puerto Rican steam engine that is not only preserved, but it's also running. Here is some footage and pictures of the engine running. It is impressive that this 1890 steam locomotive that was built for the Panama Canal, then later sold to Puerto Rico, used for passenger service, later for switching and goods, somehow ended up in the Henry Ford Museum, was later sold in 1970 to the Chemin de Fer de la Baie de Somme. I'm pretty sure I just butchered that too, but who cares? For use on their line in France, and it was restored in 2003 and has been running since. That is impressive, and it is the only Puerto Rican steamer that's still in operation. Fun fact, they decided rather than restoring it in a French livery, they actually kept it in its original Puerto Rican livery. So if you were to see the engine today, it will have its number 2 and the FCPR plaque still on it, proudly sustaining it. It looks amazing, doesn't it? And that, everyone, is the story of the French steamers, the first Puerto Rican steam locomotives on the island, who were some of the biggest and strongest engines for the time, and were icons of the island, and how one is still surviving to this day and in operational service. These engines have always been fascinating to me, as they're usually never talked about. And unfortunately, because they're never talked about, there's very few info on them. So for this video, I had to do a lot of research for this, but thankfully, me and my team were able to find a bunch of pictures, evidence, and information on these engines to make this one big video. So, if you happen to know anyone who is interested in these French Puerto Rican steamers, send them this video, which has all the information available currently about these engines. That's all for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this Engines of Puerto Rico episode. Hopefully I shall be making more, and thank you all so much for watching today's episode. I'll see you all in the next one. And Engine 2, just keep on puffing. You're all making us all Puerto Ricans proud of ya.